Okay, so for this last part, this is part three of the PLC data analysis form. This is the after you spent the time looking at the overall data, what the data reflected about what the students can do well, and the areas where we need to spend more time, give our students more practice so we can remedy these challenges. And then looking at those actual questions so we can pull out um, what are the causes for the challenges that students are experiencing. Then after taking that time to do that reflection, then comes a self-reflection and then the course of action. So in this particular one, the first thing that I wanted to kind of share is when I was filling this document out, I was looking at it more like, okay, now that I completed or thought about deeply about the questions my students tended to miss, then what were some insights that I walked away with? And then and the what strategy was used, I was thinking maybe for the teacher in the classroom, maybe you're thinking what strategy was used when you first taught this. But for me, I think I was reflecting more like on what my plan is. So we can come back and see what would be a better practice or more or better use of this tool. But for now, this is what I did. So from review of this data, I found that I need to spend more time giving my students practice understanding text types, particularly making sure that they understand how the longer pieces of text are organized and how typically stories or text are organized chronologically, first, second, next, lastly. Those kind of transition words can indicate chronological sequence. Um, Sometimes texts are organized cause effect, sometimes compare and contrast, and students being able to know that information can help them navigate through those longer pieces of text like we saw in these Julius Caesar texts. Okay, so that was an insight that I took away. A strategy that I would use to address this particular um, need to give students practice with complex text is using the markup text strategy that we use through Avid. Again, particularly so that I can help my students identify what those main ideas are of the text, chunking this in paragraphs, and then eventually move to the they say, I say notation strategy, where per paragraph we're looking at what is the author saying here, and then after I thought deeply, looked at the language, what comment do I have about what the author is trying to do here in this particular section. So again, this is moving our students to help them to paraphrase and to make inferences about what they're reading. Again, these two strategies combined, I think, help really to internalize the text organization as well as the content. Again, keeping in mind our population, Socratic seminar format would be appropriate because I want to make sure and give my students deeper, more practice into deeper thinking about our readings, but we want to make sure this is done in the most engaging format. So I provided a tool here. I've used this several times, so I tagged it here so I make sure that I keep that in mind as I'm prepping my reteaching. Okay, so you'll see several resources here, but particularly you could see the essential questions. So here you could, if you use this, you can write your own essential question about the reading you will use to give your students practice in the areas that were identified in our study of the items. The article, this would be the format of marking up the text. If you need to look up the information further, in this particular slide at the bottom, you'll find resources you can use so you can follow step-by-step directions if you never guided a marking of the text activity. I love to use Costa's levels of thinking about the article, again, to help our students gain deeper understanding, deeper thinking about the content. And then actually doing the Socratic discussion, last word, and closing thoughts. And then closing out with now that we spent the time talking about the language, about the text, and what I'm thinking about it, now actually using a frame that requires specific language for students to respond to about the article. Okay, because we saw like in that one question about the Declaration of Independence, depending on the variation of the word, a student could get tripped up. So we need to give our students practicing using precise language and filling out frames. So that would be a way to kind of throw that in as review and practice. Okay, so there's that resource. The actions that I would take, again, would be very important, whatever reading practice, that it's collaborative. Definitely, I saw the need for taking opportunities to develop language academically throughout my reteaching of this piece. So I'm definitely going to focus on grammar pieces, building prior knowledge to key topics, and then academic terms that are relevant to the content. So that's going to be important in whatever I do, that I address it in these two ways. Some of the resources I'm going to use, I found this really great video that talks about the text structure. It's kind of like a rap, and it's really engaging, and I think really sends a message home. This other resource I tagged here is just a video where we can watch a couple teachers facilitating the collaborative reading strategies with their students using text. I think this will be a great tool for me to make sure that I'm setting everything in the right context for my students. How will I know that, using these resources, my students will actually grow and improve in those standards that we said they need more practice in? One thing you can do is create a short EDIMS assessment, like maybe pick one reading that has 3 to 4 questions. That's one way you can do that. Or I also thought we can use a Newsela resource that we have available. So what I did is I did that. I went to Newsela, so you can do that. Newsela, go to your account. Okay. The best thing to do, because I already know the standards I want to focus on, under search Newsela here, just go ahead and click. I'm going to say that I want my selection that we're going to read in class to be for 8th grade. We said that we're focusing on reading standard 1, what the text says, central idea, words and meaning, and text structure. I'm going to click on argument and claim. Okay, so whatever is available through Newsela, I wanted to focus on these areas. So I'm going to click advanced search. And what you'll find is different articles that you can use that address those standards that were identified and in the grade level that you want them. And this is great. There's all kinds of different topics that can relate either by content or just whatever you want to use. Okay, so it's really cool. I was able to find this one on that's an issue that's near and dear to a lot of our students. It's titled "Migrant Caravan Makes Trek from Central America Seeking Asylum in the U.S." So that's one that I clicked. It's really cool. Remember, importance to give our students reading practice in the Lexile. They'll be assessed, but there are times where you could adjust the Lexile. So here's a really engaging article. You can use all those strategies we talked about. Under activities, you'll find the quiz, and the questions are great. There's 4 questions here. I pasted this first question onto our document so I would remember. So it says, read the list of selections from the article. Here are the different selections. The question says, which 2 selections taken together provide the best evidence to support the idea that Tijuana is ill-equipped to serve the needs of thousands of incoming migrants. So again, having to select 2 pieces of evidence that support something that was already talked about in the article. So you'll have 4 different questions that address those standards that we talked about. So again, Newsela is a really great resource. It's engaging and real quick to administer. Okay. Course of action. Once again, this piece, what needs to happen. Again, you can look at it in 2 ways. What needs to happen, so this is kind of like the self-reflection is kind of like my thinking. And then what needs to happen after what needs to happen. So, for example, I was thinking of it in this way. I'm going to pull my article, because remember that this different article that I picked, I'm going to do this practice in class. I will be using the markup the text, the Socratic seminar. And then when I administer my assessment, I'm going to give them another article from Nuzella. They are to use their markup strategies to help them engage with the text. And then they'll take the 4 questions at the end on those standards that we address. And this is how I will know that they improved in these standards, because of the practice we did in class. Identify when I'm going to do this. One of the things I would hope to achieve from this is that students are using some of the strategies to gain deeper reading understanding of the complex text. We're hoping that they gain 70% proficiency, but remember that when we were looking at the reading performance on this particular assessment, our kids did 32%. So if our students perform at least at 50% proficiency, this is definitely improvement. So I'm going to keep that in mind. And then extended learning, I know that marking up the text and practice making inference will be an ongoing activity that I know they will need repeated numerous opportunities to practice. And then I would definitely collaborate with my grade level team. I would always utilize Ms. Carrillo or Mr. De Vicente to help implement any pieces of these lessons. Okay. So I'm curious, after we do this, what are some other ways that we can use this self-reflection and course of action, so that we can best use this tool to help us tailor our instruction to meet the needs of our students. So this was my thinking. So again, not perfect, but definitely one way that you can fill out this form. Okay. If you have any questions, please follow up with me. Send me an email, Norma Carrillo, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Good luck with this. Thank you.